We were recently invited by the wonderful people at Steamforged Games to the launch of Horizon Forbidden West: Seeds of Rebellion, a fully cooperative tabletop experience set in the world of Guerrilla Games' massive franchise. Not only did we get an exclusive playthrough, but we were lucky enough to speak to Fraser McFetridge, the lead designer of the game, on exactly what went into creating such an epic collaboration.
So, can you tell us about the development?
I can. That's a big question, but yeah.
Big question, big question.
So I guess there's two places to start with this one. The easy one is Seeds of Rebellion is a follow-up game to the Zero Dawn board game. So we had an engine that we knew was already popular and well-liked. We had minis out there that people enjoy playing with, they enjoy painting, and so we knew that these were going to make two core pillars of the Seeds of Rebellion game design. So that decision was made for us. The other one, much more interesting story, is we as a company have many very enthusiastic RPG players. We have an entire RPG department, for instance. We're big into narrative. So anytime we want to make a game, there's this huge, what narrative are we going to do? How are we going to tell a story? What mechanics are we going to put into it? When we make a licensed game, that question is more complex because we're not working within our own worlds or telling our own story. We need to dance to someone else's tune. We're dancing with them, but it's their song. So we fast forward beyond the release of Zero Dawn to a trip to Amsterdam when we sit down with the Guerrilla Games narrative team, and we have a great big back and forth about the narrative component for Seeds of Rebellion, which we felt very passionately about. Fortunately, so did they. I'm sure that's not surprising. But we had a great meeting, and we pitched a lot of stuff. They pitched a lot of stuff to us, and we eventually agreed that the most sensible place to set the game was in the Forbidden West at a time frame that Aloy wasn't there. So we can tell the story of what occurred there through someone else's eyes other than Aloy's. And I'm sworn to secrecy on the details, but there are some really, really cool stuff that happened in that area at that time that is, I am so excited for people to experience. For instance, I'm a huge fan of Horizon and the world, so I'm walking into this meeting and I've got this big cheesy grin on my face and I'm like, professional, come on, get it together. That was a really big high point for me. So that then informs the remainder of the big decisions that we're going to make with this game. For instance, Zero Dawn was semi-cooperative. That's a harder sell with this narrative structure, the storytelling structure. How do we make people compete with one another while also working together to save the world? It's just, it doesn't gel well. And so based on that and some community feedback that we received that they really enjoyed Zero Dawn playing cooperative, we decided, right, the core focus of this game is going to be fully cooperative. That opens the door in a lot of little ways that we feel really elevate the engine. And that's the two big branches that come together to form the pillars of what Seeds of Rebellion is as an engine and a game and experience.
Do you think it will be a very different experience for players compared to the first game? Or is it going to be familiar in the way that won't take much getting used to?
I actually think it will be both. I actually think that for people who have already played the first game and are familiar with the first game, many of the mechanics are the same. And so there will be a very, very minimal amount of time spent learning what's new and understanding not just what the stuff does, but what the strategy is, how it affects them. But really the shift to fully cooperative and with enemies, encounter design, and really most importantly, the narrative integration throughout that, I feel like even though they'll be playing within a familiar system, the experience will feel new.
And speaking of things being new, we spoke about customization of the player characters themselves. Is that a challenging thing to build in, or is it more exciting?
Not at all. I love this stuff. I adore creating experience curves and ability curves, planning out what a starting character looks like, what options they'll have at stage A, B, C, D, E, so on, so that as the game progresses, new routes and new builds and new strategies appear to them, and players can really, really have agency and over how their own gameplay will take shape. And also they can respond live. So, for instance, by the time characters hit the mid-game, their maximum deck size will be a lot smaller than the number of cards that they have that they can build their deck with. So, if they find out a certain enemy has a certain stat or a certain rule before they go into an encounter, which they can modify their deck accordingly with the cards that they have. And so you can constantly feel like you're adding value to your character and adding agency to your gameplay as you level. And I absolutely adore this. It's my second favorite bit, third favorite. I have a long list of things I really love about this job. But it's high. I really enjoy putting that structure together for people.
How important was it making the game accessible for those that perhaps hadn't experienced the world of Horizon before?
So we are advantaged here in that the story that we're telling is new. You don't need the previously on Horizon Zero Dawn. You're playing new characters. You will meet characters that are in video games. You will interact with them, but you don't need to have played the video game to understand that this is the chief of the Tanakh tribe you're talking to. He is important, and so on. So because you're seeing the game and the world through the lens of new characters, there are players, both new and old, familiar with Horizon and unfamiliar with Horizon, will still go through the same journey of discovery. So actually, I think that we were benefited a lot by the narrative situation.
The one thing that got me when I tried the game earlier was the fact that there were lots of different ways you could play. There's not like a set play style. Was that something that was that a core consideration from the beginning, or was that something that was a eureka moment at some point during development? When did that come about?
I'd say there's definitely like a Steamforged Games philosophy and a personal philosophy in there, that it's player agency at all times in all for all purposes is really, really important. It's achieving that through layering of simple mechanics that are very digestible and very easy to see how you can piece them together to a coherent strategy and play style. That is like the most challenging thing. But we always aim to create agency on the board, off the board, when you're building your deck, when you're choosing how you're going to play your turn, when you're choosing how you will interact with your allies. We always want there to be a high degree of player agency. And so like, I'm really glad that came through for you.
As someone so heavily involved with the game and living and breathing the game, what's the main thing that you would want people to take away from this once they've played it? What's the kind of feeling? That's
a good question. I really want them to feel like they have played an authentic Horizon game. They have got a very genuine Horizon Forbidden West experience. When you play any game, all games, video games included, you come away from it with this feeling where Horizon very much there's this sense of grandeur and sort of epic visuals that comes from the machines, it comes from the landscape, it comes from all of these different things. So obviously when you're playing a board game, the translation of that can be challenging, but I'd really, really like people to come away with that same sense through the size and the scale of the miniatures, through like the highly detailed like maps that we're working with Guerrilla to put together. It's also how they experience the gameplay itself, like how do they make decisions, how rewarding does it feel to destroy components of a machine, how it feels really good when, say, you've managed to lure the machine onto your trap and now it's taking a bunch of damage and it's got acid covering it, reducing its armor, and I want people to come away feeling like the same sense of achievement, like mid-fight, end-fight, that they do in the video game. And we really want to emulate that so that people come away with very much the same feeling that they did when they played the video game.
Very last question, because I've seen the miniatures and they're beautiful. Do you have a favorite machine miniature?
I do.
Can you tell us?
Oh, I might do. That's hard. It's actually hard. I think my favorite is the Slitherfang. It's just so good. The Slaughter Spine is the close second.